Welcome to a special Mother's Day episode of Dedicated. Today we're talking with my beautiful wife, mother of our 3 kids, Megyn Kelly. She is a former attorney. She was a badass litigator for Jones Day, turned journalist and author. She was included in Time Magazine's 100 Most Influential People in the World in the year 2014, back when that was more of a thing. I think Time Magazine's running out of influential people. Mm-hmm. She's interviewed heads of state from around the world. She's moderated numerous presidential debates, including in December 2023, the most recent debate our country has had, and the only one worth watching that entire season. She's known for her rigorous brand of journalism in which she is tough on both sides of the aisle. But best of all, she's the architect of her own life and career. She has built an independent media company so that she can say what she wants when she wants to say it. And that allows her to be fully present in raising our kids. This gets to the heart of our Mother's Day episode. She's there to take our kids to school, to bring them home from school. She makes all the plays and the sports. She drives them to dances and first dates, and she helps with homework, and she tucks them in at night, including last night. Our 10-year-old is super sick right now, and you're up there reading books to him in bed. While I'm hiding downstairs, thinking I'm not going anywhere near that ball of germs tonight. You're up there being a good mom, as
Thanks,
always.
Dave.
So welcome to this Mother's Day episode of the show, honey.
Thank you. Thank you very much. For those wondering what we were reading, it was Wolf Hollow, which has been a good book. I've been reading it out loud to Thatcher, and it's good. It's intriguing.
That's actually a good point. So listeners know the purpose of this episode is we're going to have a martini and shoot the breeze for a little bit, but then you're going to make 3 Mother's Day book recommendations for the audience. And then there will be the traditional lightning round at the end of the show.
I'm ready for you, Brunt.
All right. All right. So then I'm going to start getting going on the martini. We're going to do gin martini, which is that's redundant. You don't need to say gin, just the martini.
That's right.
With olives, a little slightly dirty.
It was kind of fun when we first discovered gin, right? We were always doing more of a vodka martini when we first started drinking martinis.
Yep.
And then we found out that's not really the way. And I like the gin. You know, Meredith, our friend, she can't handle gin, so she's always avoiding it. But I have to say, thumbs up.
The gin is good. It's the little juniper berry is in there. It makes a nice difference.
And you can go either way. You can have the olives or you can have the twist.
Lemon twist.
Sometimes the twist is what you're in the mood for.
All right. Slightly dirty.
Slightly dirty.
That's right.
Just like my men.
That's my gal. All right. 3 olives. So thank you so much for doing the show, honey.
This was a tough booking for you.
This is my best get yet. And it didn't require the prep that you sometimes do. Like when you did Howard Stern all those years ago, we were
God.
Prepping for all that.
That
for
was
months.
Insane. I was murder boarded by half the people at Fox to get me ready. What will I say? And then with you.
Yeah.
What won't I? How much are we giving up? You can't go on that show and be a prude.
I think you landed it perfectly. You gave up just the right amount. We won't be doing the Mary F. Kill thing today, as Howard does.
Looks perfect.
All right.
Thank you.
Dirty martini. Cheers, babe.
Cheers,
Love you.
honey.
Happy
Love you
Mother's
too.
Day.
Thank you. Perfect yet again. I think that your audience knows this from all your other guests, but you really are an amazing mixologist. You're so good at making cocktails.
Yeah.
You just have a knack for it. I know you actually used to do it professionally for a while.
Yeah.
But you just have the gift.
I did it professionally at a beach bar, though. It was like opening beers and pouring shots of Jaeger. There wasn't a lot of, making grasshoppers and things, but...
There was one time where we found a new drink online. It looked so yummy. And I'm like, do you think you can make this? And you were like, I'll give it a shot. And you yelled at me from the kitchen. I have no idea whether I'm going to come through on this. And I yelled back, I have very low expectations and I know you'll exceed them. And you yelled back, that makes no sense.
There's no logic behind that.
But you did.
I did nail it. And the other thing about the show is we've learned a couple of new cocktail options. Lee Bardugo had the French 75. That was good.
Love that. That's become part of our repertoire. That's a very fancy, high-end drink. I don't like straight champagne.
Yeah.
But that one, speaking of gin,
Gin,
takes
champagne,
it next level.
lemon.
One of those is plenty, by the way.
And I think the most popular drink so far is the Manhattan. Just had Eric Larson on. And just as a quick aside, the show has been so fun. I'm meeting new writers whose work I love and respect, and having friends on that I've known for a long time whose work I love and respect. So it's just been a great thing for me as a writer who's often sort of in my little, my little bunker doing my writing. It's a great way to sort of come out and enter the world a bit.
And meet some of your heroes.
So exactly right. So when I was first talking to execs at SiriusXM about the concepts for the show, I had this top 10 wish list of bookings of writers that I really hoped could come on the show, and just had Eric Larson on, author of Devil in the White City and
big.
Dead Wake and Splendid in the Vile. And that it put the lie to that expression, don't ever meet your heroes, because he was that cool and that great. It was really just such a pleasure. And he chose the Manhattan, which happens to be my favorite drink.
To love him.
Exactly.
It's been so fun to watch you go from this being an idea where you thought it'd be really cool to actually going into SiriusXM and doing the interviews and coming home, sometimes drunk, but coming home just uplifted and with a chest full of energy from having met another really interesting, cool, thoughtful person. And the fact that they're in your lane of work, right, writing, is so much the better.
It's great. It's such an engaging conversation, and everyone does it differently. It's so fun to hear from these different writers, and they all have such a different way of going, or else they just sort of uncover some aspect of the way they do it that might be consistent with other people, but say it in a way that I hadn't thought of before. It's really just sort of it's an energizing kind of a conversation.
But you know what's special about Dedicated is everyone who comes on here, present company accepted, is extremely smart. I mean, truly, it's amazing to listen to the guests and their facility with words, ideas, these little gems that they'll just drop casually in conversation where you're like, oh my God, that's beautiful. Or, oh wow, look how he turns a phrase, because they're immersed in language for a living. So it's one of the things I love about the show, forgive me, who wrote Angela's Ashes? He used to say it's like chewing rubies in your mouth when you have like a great piece of writing. And that's how Dedicated makes me feel.
Yeah, it's really down
Frank
to
McCourt.
Like wonderful. I just try to get out of the way. I ask questions and they come on and they shine. And Eric Larson will tell you a bit about how he does his research and how he thinks about narrative and putting a story together, what he looks for in an idea for the next book, and tons of fiction writers, nonfiction writers, and I have not yet held up your book, Settle for More, this phenomenal memoir that actually got kind of cribbed for the movie Bombshell.
It did get cribbed, and we did not get any money.
No royalties on that.
No one paid us a dime.
But,
nor would I have sold them.
Also a great and an inspiring book, and a lot of just your style. As I say about you, you're not a perfectionist, but you're an exceptionalist. And so if you're going to put your name on anything, it has to be great. And so this ended up being a ton of work. For you to put out.
It was nonstop, and I don't know. I'm glad I wrote it because it was a crazy period of time for us, and so it'll always be a marker for where we were at that point in our lives and what I'd learned so far. And I'm sure in another 40 years, I'll write another memoir about what happened after, and hopefully it'll be much more insightful and won't completely undermine everything I've said there. But my life philosophy remains the same. The Settle for More thing is still real.
The second one's going to be a happier book. I feel like you are fully hitting your stride, where we are as a family with our kids and your work. It's just like, knock wood. I got to knock on some wood or have a sip or something, because
no, we're just going to manifest it.
We're going to manifest greatness.
We don't need a knock.
Well, it's working.
Yeah. This lady and we're going to have a great next 40. This weird lady, her face. For the listening audience, there's a face, and we're in my studio. And there's this face of this woman. It's just kind of a cool addition to the studio. And I got it. I was like, well, who is that? Because what if this person is not a fan? And the next thing we hear, she starts complaining about being on the Megyn Kelly show. But we're good because it's AI generated.
AI, yeah. All right, let's go with book number one. We'll intersperse with more, witty banter. But what is your first Mother's Day book pick?
Well, I tried to pick different ones depending on what your interest is. And I fully stand by this one no matter who you are. It's called Decades, and it's by Joseph Massey, S-E-Y. You can get it on Amazon. And there's a lot I love about this book, but his poetry, it's a book of poetry. And I'm not a huge poetry reader, but his poems make me feel the way you feel when you open up the curtains on a winter morning and you see 2 feet of snow and the fat snowflakes still coming down. He captures these little moments of nature and our world around us. And it just cites like the reflection of an old hotel in a puddle that make you stop in your tracks and feel the thing he's communicating. And, he's got a real way with them word things. And the thing I love about Massey too is he's completely self-made now. He was this rising poet in the poetry world. He was getting all these laudatory reviews from the New York Times and other places. And then he got Me Too'd off of frankly just a BS situation. It was an ex-girlfriend who was bitter about how it ended. It didn't end well. He admits that. But it wasn't like he was harassing and Harvey Weinsteining people. He was like had a bad relationship that went south. So the poetry world completely turned on him. I mean, they are the meanest mofos you've ever done. Poetries. I mean, like, you wouldn't think that the poetry world would be so vicious.
Would get the knives out.
No, they're terrible. So he got railroaded out of the industry and was really sad and writes openly about the depression that followed and how low he was. And now he's rebounded and he's writing his own stuff and he's publishing, self-publishing. But you can get the stuff on Amazon, so it's relatively easy. And so I love the fact that you can give somebody that gift of that feeling with the snow. And you can also support somebody who's finding a way around.
It's great to see there are more avenues, as you say, your way around. There are more avenues for the cream to rise to the top. If he's good and if he's worth a follow. And by the way, he's a great Twitter follow. And just today, it's funny you say that because he had a photo out this morning that I saw on Twitter. And it's a photo of a little drop of water sort of just before it falls off the twig, a branch. It's like it's a sort of bubbling out, and it was reflecting the tree around it. It was a really beautiful photo, and I think he titled it Spring or something like that.
Well, his photography is just as beautiful as his poetry.
Yeah.
So I just think this is something any woman would love to receive. It's a gift of making you feel a certain way. The poems are not too long. It's a quick read, something you can pick up and put down easily. Anyway, I think everyone will love it.
All right, Decades by Joseph Massey. I want to have him on the show, actually, because I have not yet had a poet. I've had songwriters like Rick Springfield. I've had memoirists like Paulina Porskova, and even like David Duchovny has come on. He's written some good fiction and graphic novels. Duchovny has.
He's a great talker.
Range of stuff.
He'd be good for Dedicated because he's a good talker.
Good. I'll have him on then, if he's willing to come in. But you got to. That's the thing. You got to come into New York City. You got to have a cocktail. Like there's a price to pay. You can't just
do it.
Come in by Zoom for this.
I think he'd love to meet you, Duggar.
All right. Book number 2 for Mother's Day.
Okay, so this one is more just pure fun. It's called Wrong Place, Wrong Time by Gillian McAllister. And I don't remember having so much fun reading a book. I can tell you how it opens, and then, I'll leave it at that. But it opens with a mother watching her late-teened son engage in a deadly altercation on the street. And he commits what looks like a murder. She winds up at the police station with him. She's distraught. She doesn't understand at all how her otherwise well-behaved son has gotten to this point. And she can't bail him out. She goes home. She falls asleep. And when she wakes up, she's back in time by a couple of days, a day or two. And then she lives that day. And then she goes to sleep and she's back further in time. And she unravels the mystery through these leaps backward in time about this particular circumstance and her life. Really, really enjoyed it.
Oh, that's a great concept for a book. There was some movie with Guy Pearce, I think, where he was going backwards in time, or maybe he had a short-term memory or something, he kept replaying it or something. But that sounds great. I want to read that one.
Yeah.
Did you do that audio or?
I did that audio. I just think it's so fun, like the concept of time travel. And as you know, I love a mystery and I love anything crimey. So I enjoyed that from start to finish.
I don't know if there's a Dateline with Kamo, as we call him, Keith Morrison, that you haven't heard or watched on TV.
I do not miss that. And the thing about Dateline that I really like is they don't ever get too graphic.
Yeah.
Like I enjoy true crime, but I don't.
Kamo, he's tasteful.
He is tasteful.
Murders.
And he's so enjoyable to just listen to. People listen to that guy read the phone book. But I met him too when I was at NBC, and he's just a complete doll. And he does a great job of storytelling. He writes those scripts for sure. That's him. That's his own special.
Is that right? Because it's such a well-produced thing. Like 2020 is fine, but it seems like Dateline is maybe a notch above in terms of production value.
Way above. It's way above. It was the best thing of my experience at NBC to be able to work with those producers and those editors and those reporters. That they were top-notch. So I love Dateline too.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, just so listeners know, if I ever look over at Meg and I see the little AirPods in, 50/50, she's doing a news podcast, which is all over the board. I mean, you listen to 10 different news podcasts a day from all spectrums of the political left-right ideology, or it's Dateline.
Yeah, or an audiobook. Sometimes it's an audiobook, but Dateline is my default. It's nice to fall asleep to like a little gentle murder.
if it's an audiobook, within that category, there's a 50/50 chance it's the Streisand memoir, which is going to take 10 years to finish.
I'm pulling a Doug Brunt. I'm not giving up.
You're you're going to fight through it.
I always tell you to abandon these books that are so long that you don't really enjoy. It's like, I don't know, that one on, was it Hiroshito? It went on forever.
The Japanese
It was like twice as long as the Barbra Streisand. Hirohito, there
it was dry, but it was like, there was information in there, but my God, it was dry.
And I'm like, just put it away, put it aside, honey. And you were like, no. Anyway, normally I will abandon if I'm bored, but I'm not bored by the Barbara book. It's just interminable. Yeah. It just never ends.
How many hours
I like these
is
stories.
The audiobook?
I only have like another
right?
900 to go. I'll get back to you. I think I'm going to be her age by the time I finish it.
I'm getting better at abandoning a book. There are times now. There are just so many that now that I'm doing the show as well and a lot of research for my own writing. There are so many books I need to get through that I'm being a little more discerning. It used to take a lot for me. If I started a book, it would have to be really bad for me not to finish. Now my bar is a little lower to put it down.
I know, but who was it? Was it Amor Tolls who was giving you the math on how many books you'll get to read between now and the time we die, many, many, many years from now? And that was like a wake-up call for you.
The math is depressing. If you figure you read a book a month, I'm with work and things. I mean, now I read for work, which is wonderful. It's like I get to watch movies for work, so it has that kind of a feel. So I'm reading more like a book or two a week. But most people, a book a month, 2 is a big pace. So let's say it's 2. That's 25 books a year. And if we're going to live for, 30 more years.
30?
That's, say 50 more years.
Yeah, let's go with 50.
And now I've I was trying to set up a math situation that I can do in my head right now. So 50 more years, that'd be 250, call it 1,000 books a year. We're going to read like 800 to 1,000 more books in our life.
Yeah.
So, you got to choose wisely.
You're the avid reader in the family. I read a lot, but not as many books. I'm reading news all day. So it's like, if I want to listen to a book,
I love that you have that doctor app. Like your information can come in and you can convert it to audio. So even if it comes in a PDF form.
I love it. Yes.
You can, those doctor things where it's like voice to text or text to voice.
Yeah. Voice Dream. Voice Dream is what I use. Voice Dream. Yeah. And it'll read anything to me, and I love it. And it's just, you can do your makeup, you can do anything you want while you're taking in
lasagna like you cooked last night, which was phenomenal.
Trigger.
We have a running joke in the family that lasagna, if you do it right, if you do it well, the way she does it, there's so many steps involved. You got to get the meat sauce going, and then separately this, and then you got to make the bechamel sauce.
Yes.
And by the time she finishes, it's so good, but she's on her last nerve. And so everyone's like tiptoeing, like mom's a little upset. She made a lasagna today.
It's now to the point where we'll say to the kids like, hey, we're doing lasagna. And they're like, oh,
it's not worth it.
It's not worth it.
It actually is worth it. It was so good.
We figured out if I'll make it just fine. But if we add on making the salad and setting the table, I start to get upset.
Yeah, that's too much.
Yeah.
No one person can do all that.
No, we got to rein it back.
Yeah. So I'll do the salad. Kids will set the table.
As it should be.
Off we go. Yeah. All right. Third book. By the way, before you say the third book, I just wanted to say, because I think I know what your third book is, and it's nonfiction, right?
Yeah.
The best children's book we ever read to the kids was Big Pumpkin. I love Goodnight Moon.
Pumpkin.
The crayons quit the day the crayon. That was fun too. There are a number of good ones, but Big Pumpkin somehow we just got. Even I was sort of lured into that hypnotic repetition of like Big Pumpkin said
wonderful.
The vampire.
We loved Big Pumpkin. I also like the Little Blue Truck series.
Oh, those are good.
Those are really good.
I miss those days.
I know. We didn't throw those away. Like, some of the ones
the favorites we still have.
Yeah, they kind of moved on, but the favorites you can't part with them. You just sat there with them so many times reciting these.
Yeah.
It's its own form of poetry.
They're little bodies in your lap. Now they're like longer than we are. You can't even have them in your lap anymore.
I know. Or what's the one that, that makes me cry every time? It's really terrible, frankly.
Oh, yeah. Where the man carries the
Yes, he carries the mother.
Oh.
The mother keeps picking him up, and like she sings the song to him, and then finally she can't pick him up anymore, and then he picks her up. Oh my God. We'll remember it. Oh. Devastating. Don't buy that one.
As my dad said, all the phases are great. We're moving into the next phases. All right. Third and final Mother's Day book pick.
So I love Abigail Shrier, who wrote one of the most important books I've ever read, which was Irreversible Damage. Mm-hmm. And she's followed it up now with Bad Therapy, and it's out right now. And I do think this is actually also really important. It takes a hard look at the over-therapization of children. And, I'm very pro-therapy. I've been to lots of therapy. she's got some questions in there about adult therapy as well. But it's about how we're therapizing these children now in school with non-trained, armchair therapists who don't have any sort of appropriate degree, who are also really into trauma porn. So, every day at school now, the teacher's like, okay, think of a trauma. And how did you handle it? And they're trying to bring the child back to something terrible that happened to him or her, which in and of itself is not great for them. It's like they come to school, they're ready to learn math, and somebody wants them to espouse their worst trauma. And like, how'd you deal with it? Okay, great. Okay, so now on to Pythagoras. It's not that easy. And the person trying to do it is 9 times out of 10 not that qualified. So I think it's actually really...
I feel like we probably all know a few people who are therapists now, and we think back like that person, they were a disaster, but it makes sense because they were in therapy all their lives, and because they were exposed to so much, they somehow think they can then become the teacher. And then so these very troubled people become therapists. It just perpetuates the cycle.
I also really believe at this point in my life that immersing yourself in past traumas is very counterproductive. I am not a licensed therapist, but this is my own personal belief. I love my therapist, who I've had for years now, because he's only forward-looking and like present focused. Like, how do you feel about that? And what can you do to change it? And like, what's within your power now to make this situation better? He's never asked me about my, like, what was it like when you got bullied in 7th grade? By the way, it's in the book, Settle for More, again, #1 New York Times bestseller. But he doesn't want to get into that, and that's helpful to me. I don't want to get into it either. And I'm telling you, at 53, I now believe that compartmentalization is the way to go. Like, immersing yourself in the bad things is not a great way to go through life.
Yeah. Yeah, the classics sort of revisit things with your mom and your dad, and like there's probably some of that, but a lot of it has got to be more like, here are some tools to handle it, rather than like, let's go spend an hour wallowing in it.
How do you manage the feelings when you're feeling them? Yeah. I think that's the main important question in therapy. How do you manage the feelings when you're feeling them? He's big into cognitive behavioral therapy, and as you know, I've said this to you before, I boil it down to, okay, when you're talking yourself into the very scary place, something terrible is going to happen to me, a child, whatever, you can do that. Your brain might want to take you there, but you're required to make the counter list. What are the odds it's not going to happen? What are the arguments against this stuff that you're feeding into your own head? That works really well.
All right, Abigail. So all 3 authors I want to have on Dedicated, they are hereby invited anytime to come into New York City, have a drink.
Yeah.
And come on the show and talk about their life and their work and their most recent book. So
is this my Mother's Day gift, or am I getting something else?
Of course, this is it. You hate flowers.
This
We're
martini?
not doing flowers. That's not true. You don't like flowers, but flowers can't be the whole gift. They can accompany a gift.
I've told this story before, but I love this. So when Doug and I first started dating, he was so good looking. Yeah, he was so good looking, and he has such a nice personality, and he had a good job, and he comes from a nice family. But we met when we were 34 or 30. I was 35, you were 34. He's always rubbing in. He's 9 months, younger. And I was like, there's something wrong with him. I was sharing an office with Major Garrett at Fox News at the time. He's now at CBS. And I'm like, there's something wrong with him. I say, he's like either a serial killer, or he's gay, or he's got like multiple personality disorders, something wrong with him. It just can't be that this person came to me in this package, like available and possibly in love. No. And then we hit our first holiday together, and you sent me a bouquet of flowers, which is clearly like, I don't know, maybe $15.
Well, I don't know if it was that. It was just like, I sent a lot of flowers, so I just called the flower shop.
Pretty clearly.
And
the flowers arrived, and it was the puniest. I mean, it looked like the size of this little glass. It was the tiniest little. And Major Garrett looked at me and he said, well, he's not gay. But we're not big on the gift giving in general.
We're not. And I didn't I felt like red roses. It was, not time for that. That was really the only thing I knew. It's either red roses or something else. And I said, give me the something else.
And you were, I don't really like flowers, which you now know. I don't like that ever. I used to say, just write me a letter.
It's not that you don't like the flowers. You have flowers around, but it's not like, don't just send flowers absent a note or something. Like the note would be the more important part of the gift.
That's right. Or instead of, I would much rather receive a note, just a note, than a bouquet of flowers.
And how much have I in your Christmas stocking this year? A note, which will be unshared with the audience, but
I still have
See,
it.
I'm catching on.
Well, we'll do that this next time I come on. That'll really drive ratings.
Oh, read the note. Yeah, no, that's not getting read. All right, on to the lightning round, which is an extended lightning round and can go in many directions.
Oh.
Your favorite book as a kid?
I love the Judy Blume books. You know, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, or Blubber. Like, those books were horrifying and full of information and gripping, and I loved all of them.
Yeah. I have to get those. I've never read any of those. So
Well, they're a little bit more geared for girls. Like, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret is about getting your period. So I imagine that Doug Brunt was not, it's not big.
I was going to say, it sounded so good. Margaret and God.
And God.
All right. All right, so not that, but I'll check out the rest of the series. All right, this we've touched on a little bit already, but in terms of the way you consume your books, audiobook, ebook, or a printed, hardcover book.
I mean, I'm almost exclusively audio now because I read all morning. I read the news, actual news. I do listen to some of it, but almost all of it is reading. And so I have dry eye. I don't know if any of your listeners can relate to this, but I have dry eye. And so by the time I get to the evening, my eyes are shot. They're done. So I love the fact that audio is now an option.
Yeah.
And I love to, lie in our bed. We say goodnight. I'll put in the little AirPods if I want to listen to it as I'm going off to sleep. Sometimes I'll put on my little mask and I'll just drift off with my
and when you do that, I have no idea if you're awake or asleep. I just see the mat. You're like Zorro over there. By the way, you also only have so much desk time per day. And so audio allows you to do it in the car or cooking or whatever.
I absolutely love audio. God bless the people who invented that because it makes life possible for those of us who...
Have you done enough to know a favorite audiobook reader? Like Scott Brick read Diesel for me, and he's like the maestro of audiobooks. And Eduardo Ballerini does all of Amor Towles' books, and he's terrific too.
I don't know the answer, although it's definitely repeat characters because you hear the same voices. You can recognize it from, whatever book this person was in. But I confess I have not cared enough to go research their names.
Well, what was amazing that I found out, so audio, I'm only learning more about it. And I had Scott Brick on the show, and I had Eduardo on the show too, actually, to talk about, because I was like, maybe I'll read my own audiobook. But it's a whole art form. These guys are really like actors, and they do it so well, and they do it better. AI is a threat a little bit to their
Well, if you were to
business.
write like a memoir, you'd read, I think you'd read it.
Yeah, like Barbara Streisand.
Yeah.
My God, she must have spent a month reading that book.
Can I say that's one of the things I like about the audiobook and why I haven't abandoned it, because she's reading it. She's putting her personality into it. She always inflects like, in her Brooklyn accent. It's charming. I know her politics and mine are very different, but I don't care. I'm not one of those people who writes her off because we wouldn't vote the same. And she intersperses clips from her incredible performances. She'll tell you about this amazing thing she did in Central Park, and then she'll drop in a clip. I love that. Or from Funny Girl, etc.
So I'm a fan, of course. We watched a couple of her old movies. When you got the memoir, we watched the one with Robert Redford.
The Way We Were.
We watched that, which was great. Should we tell the story of running into Barbara and her current
Oh my God.
in Malibu?
We should. That's the funniest thing ever.
So it must have been 2016, because that's when like left and right both were in love with you, and you're on the cover of Vanity Fair, and we were out at the Vanity Fair Oscars party, I guess. And we went to, who was hosting the party?
It was Ron Myers.
Oh, Ron Myers was hosting the party. So we go to the party, and you're the belle of the ball. Like everyone's reporting whether or not you walked in with security. People thought I was security. So
that was ridiculous.
Yeah. She walked in like she was all that security. Meanwhile, it was me.
It was
just
you.
in a blazer.
That's right. I'm like, hello, that's my husband.
It was that same reporter. I don't want to mention her name because I guess everything wrong, but you're talking to Streisand, and she had questions for you about politics, and you guys were going back and forth. And I'm talking to this guy who I was like, he was super nice, and we were just chit-chatting about whatever, no idea who he was or whatever. And we weren't really talking about anything to do with the party. It was, he seemed to know Malibu a little bit, so he's pointing out some things. But I was sort of like getting a little antsy, like, when is she going to finish up with Barbara so I can, like go get a drink at the bar and we can move on from here. And I'm being polite. And so you guys do finally finish up.
He looked a bit disheveled.
He looked very disheveled. I didn't really want to say this part of the story, but I was like, my God, he seems like sort of like a homeless guy who straggled in here. And then you guys finally finished. We get to the bar. I'm like, how was that? I'm like, my God, I was like talking with this guy forever. And you're like, what do you mean, what guy? I'm like, that guy. And you're like,
That's James Brolin.
It was her husband, who I didn't recognize, who was a wonderful actor. And but I was more familiar, my age, I was more familiar with his son, Josh Brolin, who's also a great actor.
Crazy. Doug's like, I got stuck talking to some homeless guy for like 15 minutes. I'm like, that's James Brolin. He's like, well, he was really nice, but I'm just.
So anyway, I was going to make a point on Scott Brick, though, in terms of the audiobook reading, which it's great that she's doing that herself. I mean, it does add the personal touch, and I'm sure it's awesome. She's such a charismatic star. And I was going to say, with the way that we were, like, you don't expect to be as drawn in by her. I mean, she just has something coming from within. She's just an incredible magnetic talent.
Great actress. Great. And what's interesting about the book is she talks about how what she really wanted to be was an actress. Mm-hmm. She didn't
James
even
Brolin
know.
has something coming from within, too.
We're fans. He was a little off that night.
Yeah.
She was this kid growing up in housing projects in Brooklyn and desperate for a foot in the entertainment industry. And she really wanted to be an actress. She used to take the subway to go watch Broadway and off Broadway. And she never even knew she could sing. Her mother, who could sing but didn't have any money, had this opportunity where she got to go and record a song in a recording studio just like for a day. It was some promotional thing. And she dragged Barbara along, and Barbara sang a song, and people were like, wow, wait, the kid's really good. Before you knew it, she started singing in nightclubs, and then by 16, 17, she was already becoming a big star. But she's been so famous for so long, like 65 years. She's talking about her encounters with these stars who were in silent movies, So anyway, that's what I find interesting about it. And I love that these people are still around to take us back to old Hollywood and old America and old New York. That's half of the fun. That's one of the reasons why I love Diesel, right?
Yeah.
Like a window into our pasts through a really interesting story.
But before I finally get around to my point about Scott Brick, I feel like I need to do one more solid for James Brolin. I mean, good for him. I don't want to besmirch the man.
I don't think
good for him
cares.
for showing up at a party like disheveled and like he doesn't give an F. He's like, I'm Barbara and we do our thing. We're like king and queen of Malibu.
Maybe that's who they thought was the bodyguard.
Looking. What's that?
Maybe that's who they thought was the bodyguard.
Brolin was your bodyguard. Yeah. Because everyone else is so coiffed in like fitted clothing there. And he just looked, and the contrast of him with like everyone else there was amazing. So, but what I was going to say about Scott Brick is that what I found with Diesel is he comes with his own following. Because he read my audiobook, I had so many new people come to the Diesel story because they'll get anything Scott Brick does.
That's cool. He did a great job.
Nonfiction. He does all kinds of different things. They just love his like performance art of whatever book he does.
Yeah.
And so they actually do know what he does. You haven't gotten there yet, I guess, in your audiobook consuming career to know who's doing which books. But people just follow Scott Brick and they'll get it if he does it.
That's awesome. Good for him. I mean, way to make a career out of a great booming voice. It's not easy, but I do think if it's a memoir, you should read it. I mean, when I read the memoir for the audio for Settle for More,
people need to hear it from you.
And you know what? It was kind of cathartic. It was emotional. There were definitely scenes in there, chapter 3 in particular, where I had to stop a few times because I was crying. It was hard. You didn't want to be a blubbering fool, but you also like feeling the emotion is what was natural, and you want to share that with the audience. I do think audio can really add something.
Yeah. In your case, for sure, in a memoir, like you say. All right, next question. Dateline or Real Housewives, if you had to pick one?
Oh my God, this is like Sophie's Choice. No, it's Dateline for sure. But I am not if I'm at home and no one else is there, it's so rare, right, to get the house to yourself when our kids are young. But I'm there, you're not there, the kids aren't there, and I'm making dinner. And I can turn on the television and you want something relatively mindless and entertaining, it will either be Real Housewives or Curb Your Enthusiasm. Those two both make me laugh.
Curb is funny.
They're funny. They're just funny for different reasons. And if you watch The Real Housewives, in particular, Miami, that's what I recommend. Used to be Beverly Hills in New York for me, but I've kind of moved on to the Miami girls. You feel like a good person.
Because it's so depraved. That's the thing I can't get past. It's like I can't do the Housewives thing. If the roles are reversed, I'm doing Ancient Aliens. If I'm home alone,
100%. Or reruns of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, or like World War II in color.
Anything.
Yeah, all of those are good. And no one else wants to do with me, so I have to be alone.
No, I mean, I just turn right around and walk out when I see that stuff.
Yeah, the Housewives, I can't do it except for Mob. Was it Mob Wives?
Mob Wives
That
was
one I
fun.
kind of got into.
That was too short-lived.
I don't know why that was more interesting to me, but that one I could do, but I couldn't do the others.
But it's not religious for me. So it's not like, oh, there's a new season out. You know, it's just like a casual indulgence.
Yeah.
But
whereas Dateline, you're like, oh, there's a new Dateline.
I've seen every single one.
Yeah.
I mean, multiple times. And now I've lured you into my true crime world.
I'm kind of into it, actually.
I'm going to say something controversial, but I do think Netflix might be taking over the Dateline
they're moving
stream as
True crime
top
is
for true
on
crime.
fire. And I think people, like in the publishing book world, people have known this for a long time. In fact, the book buying audience in general is more female than male. But for crime, like for a Harlan Coben, crime thriller, he's like 80% female readers.
Loved Fool Me Once.
Harlan, yeah.
I brought you over to watch that.
Yeah.
First of all, the woman who starred in that is one of the most beautiful people I've ever seen on the screen. But it was well done.
Yeah.
We enjoyed that. We enjoyed, what was the one we watched recently with the tennis? That was fun. Apples by Leanne Moriarty. Apples Never Fall.
Apples Never Fall. Yeah, with Sam Neill.
That was good. Annette Bening.
Annette Bening, yeah.
Really enjoyed that.
That was good.
Right now we're neck deep in Palm
But I
Royale.
feel like there's been a drop off in quality. 12 years ago when we were doing Breaking Bad and the early seasons of Homeland, The Americans. Oh my God.
It was so
Season
good.
1 finale, best season finale ever. And then they landed the whole show series so well.
Yeah.
One of the, like Apples Never Fall, they didn't really land that very well.
No.
The Americans was great. Breaking Bad, Sopranos, of course, was awesome, but
Amazing.
even before that.
You and I were talking about this. So if you watch a 7-hour series that Netflix presents or whomever, and they don't land it. It's a crime series or it's a mystery and they don't land it. And in the last 30 minutes, you're like, what?
Yeah.
It doesn't erase the 6.5 hours of enjoyment you had getting there. Kind of
No.
like Game of Thrones.
Right.
It doesn't actually ruin the whole thing for you. You still have some bitterness, some resentment.
Yeah.
I've triggered you, I see.
Yeah, I know it did trigger me because you have like a lifetime of a bitter aftertaste. Like I had 6 great hours with that show, but then after like Apples Never Fall, I did the final episode just got absurd. I don't know what they were. How did that get through the final cut?
Could have used a little tweaking.
And I love Benioff and Weiss, and they, like you say, it was 6-7 great years, and then just fell to pieces.
See,
and it made me angry. And now I'm still like years later, I'm like,
I don't feel the same. I'm in news, so I'm used to trying to make the best of things.
you compartmentalize like a good therapized person.
That's right. And I look on the bright side in general. So I'm like, I'm not like they ruined it. I'm like, I got 6.5 hours of great TV, and that last half hour was but I would still do it again.
Would you?
Yeah.
Okay. I guess that's the litmus test. Because I know like our kids were watching that one with us and we were all into it. It was like appointment television in the family. Like, let's go we have time for an episode before everyone has to go to bed for school. And so we'd all gather around as a family and watch an episode, and we were discussing where it could go and who might have done it and sort of working out the plot as a family of 5 of us. So it gave us some great nights.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking like on our TV series that we've watched as a family, some are like slightly a bit of a reach in terms of appropriateness, like Parenthood, that the series, not the movie. But it was great.
That was magical.
It was.
Yeah.
We watched it during COVID with the kids. Loved that. Modern Family's probably the family favorite of all time.
God, yeah.
The funniest. Everyone in the family loves
That's our palate cleanser too. If we ever watch something that's too scary or too depraved and gross, like what were we just watching the other day? We were just like, I can't go to bed on that.
I don't
that was
remember,
like
but there's
disgusting
always
and
something.
awful. And we're like, we got to do 20 minutes of Modern Family just to like reset the brain before we go
like
to
our
bed.
friends. We feel like our friends up there. But it's good to have that. It's hard to find something that the whole family will like, especially with littles. Lost has got to be up
Lost
there.
was great.
It's
that was
rivaling for number one.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's fun to, in addition to books, which is, of course, the subject of this show, a great family series can be fun. And it can be my mom taught me that when I was little. She's like, there are different ways of being with your kid. And if you're tired and you just want to sit together and spend some time on the couch, having some popcorn and watching a show, that counts too.
But, to your point, books can also be that way. You can read the same book at the same time as your kid. There was that book, Refugee, that Yates and I read. The school actually promoted it. This is a parent-kid read. Read it at the same time and discuss it with your kid. That was super fun.
Oh, so I've got to tell the audience this story now. So as you guys know, Doug is very, very well read. He's very well cultured. And me, not so much.
That's nonsense.
To be perfectly honest, it's fine. I mean, I know a lot about the news.
You can You have Supreme Court justice level legal acumen. You can talk about anything with anyone.
Okay, but not exactly in the book world. But it's funny because it works for whatever reason in our relationship. You know, I have different interests and talents, and Doug has his own, and they mesh well. And so I'm not going to give you the name, but we had to come up with an alias for some of our addresses where we were living, before. And we decided that I would pick half of the name and he would pick half of the name. And suffice it to say that he chose a reference from one of the best literary figures of all time. And I chose something from Willy Wonka. My favorite movie when I was a kid. No, even now.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's somehow it works.
So we have a Willy Wonka vintage movie poster in the house. And we also, Eric Larson was saying that he was inspired to get into journalism through the movie All the President's Men. We also have a vintage movie poster from All the President's Men.
That was a great
So we're
movie.
we're all represented down there. All right, next question. This is an easy one. And I think I know the answer. In your household growing up, Jennings, Rather, or Brokaw?
Who do you think the answer is?
We were Jennings, and I think you were also Jennings.
We were Jennings. Yeah, same. We weren't like a big political family, but we would put it on. But my mom, my dad obviously died when I was young. My mom was much more interested in when we could get the Jeffersons on. We used to watch the Jeffersons every night, especially after my dad died. She loved putting that on, and we would laugh, and it would be like a pain reliever. But Jennings was the default. And then my mom remarried a man she met in her widow's group, and he never graduated from high school. And Peter Jennings either didn't graduate from high school or didn't go to college. Yeah,
Wow.
and he loved Peter Jennings for that reason. And then we came to journalism and started to meet some of the figures who knew Peter Jennings.
Mm-hmm.
And we found out, remember, that he was kind of an ass.
Yeah.
But I don't care.
He was like a
great
radical,
newsman.
honest guy.
Yes.
Yeah. Maybe not an ass. He said what he thought.
Well, yeah, there was like,
Maybe an ass.
the way it was described to us was he'd be the first to be washing the dishes at somebody else's house after dinner. And you'd be like, wow, there he is, Peter Jennings at the height of his fame, washing our dishes. And then he'd be like, God, that wine you served was truly terrible. Anyway, Jennings, I guess.
Jennings. He's great. He had a great voice, had a great presence. I don't know. More and more, there was just some article out saying CNN's getting ready, like all the cord cutting, CNN's going to like get into streaming. They're basically like not even
They
going to
have
be
no choice.
But yeah, those days of like the 3 network evening news guys are long gone. I really feel like when those 3 went, that was it. Like it's kind of been a mess ever since.
They've never been
like really
replaced.
since like the late 80s, 90s. It's been a mess.
No, like look at David Muir. Seems like a perfectly nice guy. Went to Syracuse, so go Orange.
Go Orange.
Good looking guy. Delivers the news fine. No one's like, I love David Muir. Or like, it's a tragedy. There's some national news breaking. I need to see David Muir. I've got, tell me what David Muir.
Yeah.
With all due respect to him, it's different. When those 3 guys passed the torch, there was no one standing
It does
there
not
receiving
lead the national conversation in any way. It doesn't set the. By the way, go Orange.
Stop
I'm not
it.
feeling that's not motivating
All
at
right.
all. Go Orange.
Do we have to talk about
The Blue
the
Devils
Fords?
is that's,
okay?
all right. So my high school, Haverford. It's just short form. Like it's short form. There's something pragmatic in there. Go Orange.
Go Fords? What is that? At least orange is the color. People like it. Yeah, it's like makes me feel happy.
It makes you want to go tackle somebody.
Yeah.
Orange.
They're like a Ford. Go Ford. What's it going to do? Like back over me?
All right. But it's a draw. Historical person you wish you could pull through time to interview.
Rudy Diesel. It would earn me major points with my husband.
Huge.
And you have made me fascinated by him.
Oh, thank you. Rudolph Diesel.
I would tell him I went to your whole museum. I've been dragged over.
We went all the way to Paris and we went to the Rudolph Diesel.
There, I was like,
You know what? There
Paris?
is no Rudolph Diesel Museum. There is a weird technical museum in the, I think, like 3rd arrondissement of Paris.
Yes.
That has a diesel engine in it that we went to go see. She was like the most gracious, wonderful mother and wife. Again, back to the heart of the show, to go there with me because I was geeking out on that.
And then again, to continue our theme, there was Doug like in front of the diesel engines and we took some pictures which wound up in your book. And there I was like, look at the cool telephones.
And the hairdryer. There was like a hairdryer from like 1960 that was in a museum.
There's something for everyone. It takes all kinds.
Yeah. But that it was, and then there were like a couple like second grade field trips. Like it's you, me, and a bunch of munchkins with their teachers going in this weird museum. But it was an awesome museum. It was a former monastery, former abbey in Paris. The oldest museum in Paris.
We're at Gucci and Chanel.
I saved us like 10 grand. I was like, we earned money that day. Okay, person today that you most want to interview. Rudolph Diesel is your answer to the last question. What about today?
That's easy. There's no one who comes close to this person. Meghan Markle.
Ooh, yeah.
Literally everybody would watch that. They would.
That would be amazing.
Why did you complain about the size of your castle? That would be my opener.
Her PR people are like, this sounds like this is an opportunity. You should go on with her. It's going to go well.
I've never seen somebody less self-aware than that woman. I would give anything to sit down. It'd have to be like an hour. You can't do 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And ask her all of my probing questions. And you know what? She would emerge.
She should do it, actually.
Better off than she began.
Totally. If she came in there and she were honest and did the whole, like answered all the questions, it would completely allow her to address all the people who are skeptical about her.
And then I'd be like,
you wouldn't be nasty. You'd be skeptical.
Well, I might ask her why she killed the queen.
Well, that would be mean.
that may be the martini. But she totally did kill the queen.
She should do it.
Who added more stress to the queen's life?
I'll fix the martinis.
Okay.
You should do it. That would be a lot of fun.
All right. I'll eliminate that one, but I'm going to be tough on her. If I don't know in what world this could ever happen, but if it could, that would be my number one.
No, it'll
She's
never
a fascinating character for this reason, because she literally put herself on Deal or No Deal and then got upset that people didn't want to hear her opinion. Anything more than what's in suitcase number 40. She was mad. She thought it was a sexist attack.
Right. You've read the job description. Like, this is what you applied for.
Right. She wanted to opine on what the nuclear code should be. I don't. Anyway.
Well, that would be fun. 100% of the planet would
I feel
watch
like I'm
that.
not doing lightning. I feel like this is more like a long, drawn out.
Well, it's
like a hurricane that sits over you for a couple of days.
Yeah. We've morphed lightning a little bit into like sort of like a nor'easter.
My bad.
No, this is great. Let's see. Oh, the reason I wanted to ask that question was I have my notes here that I remember back in the Obama administration, you were like, I want to interview Eric Holder. Because, you're a legal...
That would have been a dream.
You're the best legal-minded journalist out there. And that would have been an amazing interview. But, of course, he wouldn't do it. And so there are a number of people that, like, you can get anybody you want to come on, except for the people who are a little like, this might not end well for me. So.
Yeah. That would have been amazing, because I really would have liked to have held him to account for some of the crazy overreaches of the Obama Justice Department. This is not a political show, so I won't go there, but I've got a lot of questions for him, and I've got a lot of questions for Merrick Garland. I just have a very different view of what our Department of Justice should be doing, and just how grossly unfair both of those guys have been when it comes to messaging around police. And anyway.
All right. Well, everyone watch that one too. Most difficult interview you've ever had?
That's tough to say. Like interviewing Trump is tricky. It's tricky. He's, stream of consciousness. And you know how he communicates. It's very effective, but it's very repetitive. And he doesn't really break for you to interrupt. So he's very challenging because you must interrupt him. And now even more so that he's been president, because there's a certain level of deference and respect that is owed.
Yeah, you can't just cut him off at every moment.
He's there. I don't know if I'd call him the most difficult, though. I would say, like, what's coming to mind when you say that is there was one night on Fox News when I was doing the Kelly file, and this poor man, his daughter was a journalist, and she had been killed that day by a stalker who had shot her to death. And it was on camera. And he was our lead. He agreed to come on the night his daughter had been murdered.
What year was I kind of remember that.
I want to say 2015 or 16.
Yeah, I have a vague memory of that.
And he came on, and we had to run a package about his daughter's death for the audience so they knew what we were talking about. And I just remember he was upset having seen the package. Like he didn't, we were doing the news, but I just felt so bad for this man. And I remember it was really tough. Like that is frankly more of a local news thing where you find somebody who's just been through a terrible tragedy and then you put them on TV. And I'm not condemning it because it is part of gathering news, but we did it that night on our show. And all I wanted to do was give this man a hug. Mm-hmm. And I had to ask him, probing questions. He was there because he wanted to be there. And he was announcing that night a scholarship in his daughter's name. Those are the ones that stand out at me where like someone's hurting and you have to ask them tough questions, or not tough questions, but any questions.
I mean, covering like the Virginia Tech stuff. You've done a lot of the Boston Marathon. You've done some
Virginia Tech was terrible. I was there on campus when it was, still unfolding, and it was just Newtown. After Newtown, and I was pregnant with Thatcher when that happened.
Yeah, that's right.
I remember talking to Janice Dean, who's Thatcher's now godmother, and she's one of my best friends and meteorologist at Fox. And we were getting the numbers on the deaths and saying, JD, how am I going to do this? I'm going to go out there. And she was crying too. She's like, MK, you can do it. You can do it. Just be strong. But that, just covering it from my anchor desk, never mind the poor, people who were there surrounded by their families. That was probably one of the greatest challenges.
News is dark. This is why when our 10-year-old goes off on his field trips, Megan's out yelling out the car window like, don't let anyone touch you in your private places.
Well, it's important to bring life's lessons. Poor Thatcher's like, what?
Yeah.
I'm like, we've gone over this. What do you mean what? But look.
But your world, it brings in lots of light too. Like you have so many, as we were saying earlier with my conversations with other writers and how much, wisdom and funness that brings into the household. Your job also does that in addition to the darkness and the terrible stories. But
if you can't find a way to laugh about the news, even on the darkest of days, you're doing it wrong. You're in the wrong business. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I love about news is how absurd it can be. Just recently, some of the pro-Palestinian protesters were complaining about how they'd been attacked with chemical weapons on the Columbia campus. Well, it turned out it was a fart spray. I'm sorry, but if you missed that story, you failed in your job as a journalist.
Yeah.
That's just too fun. And by the way, the fart spray was called liquid ass. Who wouldn't report on that?
This is 100% your brand of humor. 100%. It's amazing.
It's just
and a little bit
fun.
mine. Like even more so you than me, really. It's amazing.
Oh, you're just as bad as I am.
All right. Well, on that note, most fun interview you've ever had?
So I would say, like, on my show now, I'm having the most fun I've ever had as a journalist. And in general, there have been a lot of shows where we laugh a lot, but in general, I love when the guys from the Fifth Column come on.
Those guys are great.
And the guys from Ruthless.
Yeah, yeah.
They're all very smart guys. The Fifth Column is a bunch of libertarians, and Ruthless is a bunch of conservative operatives who get people elected on the right side of the aisle. But they're all these guys with great senses of humor, and they make me laugh, and I laugh with them. It's 2 hours, because my show is 2 hours long, 1.5 once it's been taken off SiriusXM and put out in podcast, and they're where we just cry sometimes. We laugh so hard, but smart analysis of the news too. So that's the sweet spot.
You do a great job of like keeping those guys all together, because they have so many fun things to say. It's like this rabble-rousing crew, but you're sort of like making sure the trains run on time or whatever, but you kind of bring it all home. Those are super fun episodes to listen to.
When we get to, the week before, my team will go over with me the bookings the week before they hit. And, when I hear that one of those guys is coming up, one of those shows, I get excited. I get happy. I'm like, it's going to be a great, fun, relatively easy day.
Yeah.
Because there are also people who are steeped in the news.
Yeah.
And they're just funny. It's hard to find people who can talk really well on camera or on audio, who are both really smart and really funny.
Yeah.
And relatable, right?
You do almost the impossible thing, because it's all of those things, but it's also informative. Like you're getting all the news, but you're laughing half the time. Whereas the rest of the world's crying or angry, you're doing it in a way that's actually kind of fun, which is, I don't know anywhere else where that's happening.
Oh, well, some days we're angry, but it'd be 80-20, I would say. happy warrior to angry warrior.
Yeah. All right, last question for Megyn Kelly on this special Mother's Day episode. One piece of advice for the audience.
Well, I have a lot of thoughts on a lot of things, so I guess I'll try to limit this one to motherhood. And I would say probably the best thing I think we've done as parents and that I would recommend to others is straight out of the dog training handbook, which is ignore the negative and reward the positive. And I do think that's one of the key ways in which you produce a great kid.
That's actually, I've never thought about that way. That's great.
Yeah.
I love that.
Well, our friend Lisa Schroeder is a dog trainer. She has been very important, although Strudwick is a lost cause.
No, it's too far. He's actually regressed to peeing in the house again.
Oh, just when you discover that, you're like, this dog's a problem. We know. There's a whole newsletter about it.
That was quoting me from last night. This dog is a problem. I'm like, why is the living room starting to smell like pee?
We literally have a plastic carpet because of him. Our carpet is made out of plastic. But anyway, that's her big thing in training animals. And I think, we've been taking that same approach to our kids. We, as much as possible, ignore the negative. I mean, some things are so egregious, they actually have to be punished. But for the most part, we give them no attention. Mm-hmm. And the good things we constantly point out. And I do think that's very, very important to raising a good kid.
Oh, that's great. Well, honey, I love you. Happy Mother's Day.
Love you too, babe. Thanks for making me a mom.
All right. It's a wrap. That was awesome. Thank you.
Was that like an R-rated way to end? Are people picturing something naughty?
How so?
You making me a mom. You know what I'm saying?
Thanks for betting me.
Good times.